story, but because one of the biggest things is to read Scripture more, it can be an intimidating thing, especially because the Old Testament for me, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but for me, that's 2/3 of the book. That means there's a lot of stuff there. A lot more stuff than the gospel. You know, the good news that has Jesus and his ministry there, and some more things that we're familiar with, and shorter books. But also it's different because we live as a resurrection people, as Easter people, so we're waiting oftentimes in the Old Testament, waiting upon Jesus, and sometimes so we read that through the lens of, but Jesus is already here. And so it's hard sometimes to relate, or we really have to force ourselves to get into that spot of knowing that they didn't have that same knowledge, or they didn't have that same presence in their life because they were waiting upon the Messiah. They were waiting upon a covenant that would never be broken. And so we have to get in that place. And so when we're taking a look at the Old Testament, because it's so thick, it's 2/3 of the book, because it's so wordy, and sometimes the culture is so different there, that it gets intimidating sometimes. It's easy to get lost. So recognizing that, we just want to take a couple of weeks to look over a couple of prominent figures in the Old Testament, because there will be names that we journey with for a while, more than a page or two or a chapter or two. And Samuel even has a couple of books that are named after him, because there's a journey here. And I also wanted us to think this week, when it's just a quick snapshot into Samuel, we'll be taking a little bit, a few verses from 1 Samuel chapter 8, but I didn't put it on the screen because I would love for you to open it up and go over it after we have our time today. But I also wanted you to think and get familiar with someone who is influential in the Old Testament. Friends, if we were to write our word, okay, now I'm not saying God's word, but if we were to have like a Bible of our lives, of our entire journey and story, if we were to have a book that covered that, who would be the significant influences and people in your life? Who would have significant chapters? And you know as well as I do that some people would have a lot of the book, wouldn't they? Because they've been an influential part of our life. They inspired us, or they were such a pillar in our lives. Well, Samuel was an influential person in the life of Israel, the nation of Israel, and was influential because God used him to influence people around him. And so I wanted us to think about that briefly, because when we're looking at the influences we have, when we're covering Samuel today, a reason why Samuel was so influential wasn't because of his brains or his appearance or his station in life. It was because he learned how to listen to God when many people stopped listening to God, or stopped remembering even how to listen to God. That Samuel led in a countercultural way, that people saw the frauds all around him but recognized there was something different about Samuel. And they trusted him for a long, long time. And we can see that also when we take a look today, that Samuel's parents, Samuel's mother was unable to have children. And so her and her husband prayed, of course, for children, because it was something that they desperately wanted in their lives. And their prayer included that we will, to God, that if we are blessed with a child, especially a son, that we would dedicate them to your service. Because they were a line of priestly roles, Samuel's family was. And so Samuel's mom said that, hey, if you bless us with a son, God, we will dedicate them to you in your service, to follow in your ways. And that's what happened. She gave birth to Samuel, and then at a young age, he was influenced and taught by the temple, and stayed always close to it, and grew in stature, and grew in wisdom, and grew in influence. And from a very young age, it was evident to people around him that God had anointed and called and was blessing and had his hand upon Samuel's life. I want us to hear that a little bit when we're talking a bit about Samuel, to get to know him a bit, because when he was introduced to understanding to listen for, to intercede for the people in God, and to hear God's voice, all throughout his entire life, when God was silent to others, Samuel is still listening. And I think it speaks a lot to when we offer our children to be influenced and raised by God. To have that exposure, to have that hearing what God's voice sounds like. it's important in prayer time when our kids know that if the Lord sees all prayer requests, hears them all, big and small, that we would lift up our family pets. To know that God, our hearts hurt even for those things. And our families are concerned. And we love them, and we know the power of prayer. Friends, something like that, do you look forward to seeing what prayer life is going to be 20 years from now for those kids that put mom's hand in the air and said, will you pray for our family and our love? What's that going to be like in 20 years if they know now that, Lord, you care enough about me and my family and my pet? How much more so in 20 years will faith be tested and tried, and we can look back and say we saw the Lord's hand in their lives from a young age. So we're taking a look at Samuel. I wanted us to understand that the nation of Israel was a theocracy, and that means that there wasn't a kingship, it wasn't a monarchy, it wasn't a democracy like we have here. It was one nation under God. Does that sound familiar? It was one nation under God. It wasn't a king to rule them. It was one God to rule over them. And so we can see what we're taking place in the timeline of where Samuel falls in. We've already seen creation. We've already seen Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt in that time period. We've seen Joshua take over and continue to lead them. We've seen this time of Judges where there again was no ruler, but there was these judges that would help different pockets of the nation go about their daily lives and do what they see best. Well, it came a time in Israelites' life that they looked around a little bit. They took their eyes off God. That they didn't want to be a nation that had been provided for a long, long time. They were flourishing in certain ways, but they wanted what everybody else had. They wanted a king to rule them. They wanted someone that they could see, someone that they could focus their attention to, so that they would be able to be led like the other nations are being led. Now we can kind of put a pin in that for a second, can't we? And say this is sort of where that begins, isn't it? It's a good starter. When you take your eyes away from God and want what everyone else has, you know the story is about to get interesting. And it doesn't always necessarily have a happy ending, right? But here's where we are. And so here's this moment when the people are growing in this way and they're walking through this life. And as we talked a little bit about Samuel, that he grew up and his brothers were also in that line of priestly rulership, is they were a bit corrupt. That they were doing things that they shouldn't have been. And so even though Samuel's family was starting to get a reputation for being a little unsavory, Samuel rose above it and people could see that he was different. And so, of course, Samuel's kids eventually would be birthed into the line of priesthood, and the people would also begin to see that unlike Samuel, his kids were straying and using that office as a priest for some unsavory things and gain in their lives. And people began to see it. And so, when Samuel was older, the people began to come and meet with him and say, Samuel, you are getting old, and we don't know how much longer you'll be with us, or you'll be functioning, or you'll be able to lead us. And listen, we love you, and this is paraphrasing, of course, is we love you, and we love what you're doing for us, and you're a righteous man of God. But your kids are schmucks. They're not walking the same way you do. They don't do what you say. And we're having fear that if you go or are incapable of leading us, Samuel, your kids are going to ruin things. They're not going to lead like you. They're not led by God. They're just like the family that came before you. So of course this has got to hurt, right? Any parents in the house? Ugh, your kids are schmucks and you can't trust them. What? So Samuel responded in a way that all of us parents who've ever been parents do when someone is criticizing our children. Pray. All right with that? We criticize our kids, the first thing we do in response is pray? It should be. It might not be, but it should be. So Samuel goes to prayer. And I want us to take a look at what happens here when Samuel comes to prayer, because the people have come to them and said, what has worked so far in you, what has served so far with you, Samuel, having influence and ruling over us and leading us to these great victories of God and hearing God's voice and leading us, it's not going to work anymore. We have to be like those other nations who have a king to lead them, because you will be gone soon, and we can't trust your kids to lead the way that you did. The nation said in verse 6 of 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 6, but when the people gathered, they said, give us a king to lead us. And this displeased Samuel. And after he prayed, the Lord told him this, because remember, Samuel was able to train for a long time to listen for God's word. Listen to all the people that are saying to you these things. It is not you that they have rejected, but they have rejected me, God is saying, as their king. As they have done from the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, they have constantly forsaken me. And they have served other gods for times, so that they are doing so to you right this very moment. Now listen to them, Samuel. Listen to them, but I want you to warn them and let them know what the king that they clamor for, who will reign over them, will do. Listen to them and give them what they want, but warn them what will happen if they get what they want. It reminds me of those stories, those little golden books. Did you ever have those or read those when you were a kid? They had the polished gold binding on the outside. They were a real nice, like, cardboard-sided book. And so I remember growing up and having a whole bunch of these, and the little golden books always had a lesson for you. Like, there was always something fun going on, but always to teach you something. There was a teachable moment in there. And so we can see right now that God's saying, I want you to hear them, because it's not just one or two voices or two households. There are a lot of influential people in this nation that are saying, Samuel, you need to give us a king. God says, it's not your leadership that they're questioning. It's they're starting to doubt me. They're starting to doubt the provision of one nation under God. Friends, I don't know how many times I can say that phrase without drawing some parallels between our own Pledge of Allegiance and what happens when we start asking God for saying, your provision is no longer enough. Your ways are no longer enough. Give us someone else who will lead us when we stop being one nation under God. This frustrates Samuel because he knows the depths and relationships he has with God. Friends, before we continue on, I want us to think about our own relationship with God. How many times that people have critiqued our behavior, our lifestyle, because we live differently, because we serve God, because we make choices that are countercultural. And they're not always the easy choices. They're not the quick choices either. Has it ever ostracized us? Have we been excluded from conversations because people know that we just don't talk that way? Do we not become invited to certain things because they will ruin our fun? Are we not allowed to have our children play with other kids because they pray and have morning devotions and that makes me uncomfortable? And our kids ask, how come such and so can't spend time with me? We get along well at school. It gets complicated. Friends, God's best isn't always our easiest. Very rarely is it so. But are we truly giving the throne in our lives to God? We all have a throne chair in our hearts. And we know as people on Sunday morning that we need to be giving God the throne. But we're going to be tempted before the day's even out to sit in that throne ourselves. Or, like the people here in Scripture, they're going to say, if you just give us this thing, God, we will be a better nation and people for it. Have we ever ever prayed that way or known someone who was or tempted that way? That God, if I can just earn more money through this job, things will change and get better. And I know I'll experience God's best. Lord, if we can just graduate our kids from high school or college and get them married off, then we can really begin to understand God's best. If we can just make it to retirement and be able to get that vacation home, then we will live into God's best. And if these things are things that you have in your life, I'm not discounting that, but understanding that, do we ever come with a condition, a situation? If you just allow me to meet someone who I can share my life with, then God, I know that the best is ahead of me. Do we put a person, a circumstance, or situation into the equation saying, God, I know that you have provision over me. I know that you have my best in mind, but I want to give you something that if you deliver upon me, then I will be faithful. Then everything will get better. If we've lived on the outside of that, that is never really the case, is it? Because there's always something else. There's always something else waiting behind that circumstance. Or we meet somebody, and we want it to work so bad that we make some decisions that aren't great. And then we're upside down. Because we wanted the circumstance so much and thought that was going to be what was best for us, we shoehorned it in there. You ever shoehorned a decision and then regretted it? God, I should have known better. And everybody around tried to tell us. We just didn't listen. Because we wanted it so bad. Friends, that's what free will looks like. We can make choices. We can make up our minds. We can shut God out of those decisions. We can be like the ship captain in the Titanic, too. That went on record saying, even God can't sink this thing. Yikes. No ship captain has ever, since then, said those words. We can make our own decisions and have our own free will. And it's a gift from God that we have a choice. That we're not robots, that we're not slaves. But just like Samuel is given here, if you chase hard enough for the things that you want, God will let you pursue them. But along the way, there are going to be warning signs. If it's not what God's best or will for you is. There's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be people who come and share wisdom with you and concern for you. There's going to be obstacles that come in the way. There's going to be God's presence of wanting to turn you around. There's going to be a restlessness. And you have to constantly say, out of the throne. It's mine. That's what I want. Stop getting in my chair. This is mine. It's my life. Billy Joel, right? My life. My time. I'm going to do it my way. Maybe that's Frank Sinatra. But it's the idea, friends, is that we are called that we can do anything we set our mind to. And sometimes we shut our hearts off because our mind wants something that God doesn't want for us or to do in us. And stubbornly, if we want it bad enough, God will say, fine, then pursue the thing. But be warned of what will happen if you chase after without me what you want. So God said, listen to them, but warn them what will happen. This warning comes in verse 11 through 17. This is what the king who will reign over you will do, Samuel told the people. If you want a king, he will take your sons, and he will make them serve in his chariots and horses, and they will always be out in front of his chariots and horses. He will assign commanders of thousands and 50s and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest. And still others will serve him and make weapons for him for war and equipment for his chariots. There will never be lasting peace. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and anointers and cooks and bakers. If you anoint a king, if you really want a king, he will take the best of your fields and your vineyards and your olive groves, and he will give them away to his attendants, people that you don't even know. He will also take 1/10 of your grain and of your vintage, and he'll give it to his officials and decision makers. If you really want a king and lift them up, your manservants and maidservants, and the best of your cattle and your donkeys, he will take for his own use. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves will even become slaves to the king's will. And if you disagree, you will die. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief, because the king you have chosen has walked away from God. And the Lord will not listen to you and answer your prayer in that day. But the people refused to listen. I've been that child. Have you ever had that moment when you're around, and let's say they've gotten $5 for like a holiday or a birthday, or $10? Doesn't even last 24 hours. We're in the store and you're looking all up and down, right? And you're how far can this thing go? And let's understand, usually when we have the $5, $10, it's because it came from like a birthday or some event, right? So you've already opened up loot, right? You already got stuff to play with. Everything's so new that you can't touch it all enough in your house, but you still feel like you have to spend this $10 at the store right away, right now, for something else to add to my collection. And the wise people in your life will try to tell you this. Do you really need that? You got 2 of them at home. Do you really need the one with blonde hair? Yep, that one, yep. So if we get this for you, then next week when we go to the store, you're not going to ask for anything because you spent your $10. Does it sound familiar? And you go, yep, nope, I'm not even going to ask next week. This is what I want. Are you sure? Because if you save it, you can get the big house and center that this thing goes in. You know that big thing that you see on the TV and you wish all the time you had? It's $30. So if you save this, you can get closer to getting that down the road. Yeah. I want that. I want that right there. You start to get fidgety. Like, are you just going to let me put it in the cart? Or are you going to, I want to get it. They'll tell you every reason why you shouldn't get it. Especially if it's candy. It's the worst to spend birthday money on candy. It's gone. And your parents will let you eat the whole bag anyway. Doesn't make sense. Yeah, I want it. They give it to you, and you can almost see that disgruntled look on their face, like, what could I have said that would have changed this kid's mind? That, or you even listening to the stuff I said. Your birthday's in September. You got like 4 months until Christmas. That's it. You're out. Yay. Well, 3 weeks from then, I'd be in the store. Ooh. Guess what's even on sale? Oh, come on. Now the thing's even on sale that was too big and it's so much closer that maybe they would have pitched in a $5 to help me get. I mean, that stuff happens, right? Long story short, friends, I wanted something so much. I wasn't trying to hear the voices of wisdom. I wasn't even trying to hear God's voice. And if God could have said, don't get this, Matt. I have more things in store for you. You're going to walk into a garage sale next week and you're going to have more things you could ever imagine. I wasn't trying to hear that. I wanted this right now. And then I was broke. I couldn't do anything. And I was sad when I went to the store because there's no hopes and dreams anymore. Just keep your hands in the cart. Don't ask, don't look, don't touch. Began to be a hostage in the cart, the store. And that toy, I probably lost. It probably broke because it was only $10. Friends, the idea is that Samuel said all these horrible things will happen. And he even says, and God knows they're going to happen. And he's not going to listen to you when you weep. Yeah. What? They're going to take your stuff? You're not going to have a choice? Your kids will become slaves? You'll be enlisted into war and you'll have to give your stuff away? And you still say, yeah. Didn't listen to a word Samuel had to say, and Samuel was speaking from God. Friends, in the same vein as Samuel, he would grow in time and of influence again, and he would help raise a king. And so I encourage you to look at this chapter 8, and it'll flip you over to verse 9, or chapter 9 to 10, and you'll find out the search for the king. But the whole time Samuel did it, he was doing it with a heavy heart. But he was still obedient to saying, if that's what the people want, give it to them. But when they cry out, God will rescue them. Friends, in our lives, when we choose to serve God, it costs something, time and resource. And sometimes the time to serve is going to be on a Saturday night when we've already been invited to a dinner party, or there's an event going on. We have to make a choice of saying, is this truly the time for rest and retreat and fellowship? Or could we do this again next week? But this one time, I need to do what God has called me to do and use my talents to serve on this particular Saturday night. God's not going to make us do it. But if we choose what we want, no matter what, it's very difficult for us to get angry when it seems like God's being silent. Because when there's an opportunity for us to use our talents, when there's an opportunity for us to serve, we don't do it. Then are we really seeking God's best in our life, for our community, for our neighbors? Or are we hoping that God will have us serve on our lunch break at work? Not for 30 minutes, but for 20, because I need 10 to eat. Maybe 18, so I can check my Facebook. Better yet, 50. You know what, God? Maybe next week. Because it's just not fitting into my schedule. We have right now media, friends, and I'm not saying it's the answer and solution to everything, but it doesn't get much easier than that. There are several series for any type of age group, any type of genre, any type of interest. And you can have it on your phone as quickly as you watch a YouTube video. Watch something that pours into your heart for eternity. It's the church's gift for you. Listen to it while you're getting ready. You might not think the person's appealing so you don't want to watch it. What about you're getting dinner ready? Or you're getting ready for the morning, or you're heading out, or anything like that? You can put it on and you can listen to it. It'll take you on a journey, and it'll teach you, and it'll challenge you. This is just one way in which we can even fit in some study, some influence of God into our lives that are already so busy. Friends, we have a decision to make in our lives in 2020. In our households, in the life of our church. Is this going to be the year that we answer the call? Is this going to be the year when we give God the throne in our lives? Is this going to be the year that you don't even get the rickety old throne that we dusted off for you? That we put the new wood and tapestry on it. You're not just going to have some old throne. You're going to have my throne and my life. And everyone in my world is going to see that you are on the throne of my life. When you have the best seat in the house, the highest seat in the house, God, then God's best will rain down for us. But if we don't, if we kick God out and say, this is my seat, my heart, my house, Jesus, you can have a front row pew seat, but this is mine. Scripture says, will God hear our cries? He said, I was trying. I was trying. I showed up every day, and you kept kicking me out. You chose it. It didn't just happen. You didn't trip and fall in my seat. You kicked me out. I put up roadblocks in your life. I put circumstances. I rained on your parade, literally and figuratively. Makes me question what I did wrong when right before Thanksgiving, like maybe I shouldn't be spending Thanksgiving with who I'm spending with because we got 2 feet of snow. Maybe you say, maybe you just need to stay in, Matt. I kid, but those are situations that there are roadblocks in our lives. There's restless nights. We talked about the Prince of Peace causing us to lose sleep and be anxious and nervous, because usually there's something that's not right going on. But we can take medication to fall asleep. I can take NyQuil and it's going to make me fall asleep. Go into an ugly, slobbering snore, but I'll get to sleep. I can force myself to ignore the restlessness of God and get my sleep because I have something important to do the next day. And I wonder if that moment could have made a difference in my life and someone else's life. If I just would have said, God, you're keeping me awake for a reason. Maybe I should pray about it and figure out why it is you're messing with me.